Hi everyone, welcome to Calm in the Chaos Homeschool. If you're new here, my name is Davine and I homeschool 4 kids ages 11, 12, and 15. So I made a video called 8 Reasons Why You Should Homeschool Your Kids, and I just wanted to make a follow-up video on reasons why maybe you shouldn't homeschool your kids, just to be a little more balanced. I do believe that more people than are currently homeschooling probably should, or at least should consider homeschooling their kids. I think that the barriers that they think are there may not be there, and the benefits are far greater than they can actually imagine until they do start homeschooling their kids. However, I do also believe that there are some circumstances where homeschooling your kids is probably not a good idea. So today I wanted to talk about some situations where I would caution against homeschooling. So the types of people that I can imagine watching this video are probably people who are either considering homeschooling and they just want to make sure they cover all their bases, or people who are just curious about homeschooling, or some of my long-term subscribers. So if you are a long-term subscriber, thank you so much for joining me today. I know this video is not going to be super relevant content for you, but if you do stick around, I would love for you to let me know if you can think of any more reasons why people should not homeschool, and you can put that in the comments below. And if you do love homeschooling, you can definitely give reasons why you guys do homeschool and just help some people who are doing research out. I did want to let some people who are maybe new to my channel know of some upcoming videos that are coming up. Like I said, I did do the 8 reasons why you should homeschool your kids. I'm going to link that in the description box below. In the next few weeks, I have scheduled a few other videos for some newer homeschoolers. I have a video answering a bunch of questions that I got in different Facebook groups about homeschooling from new homeschoolers. So if you're in that situation, you might want to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're notified of when future videos come out. Then I'm going to be creating a video called How to Start Homeschooling. It's going to give the basic steps on starting to think about homeschool and working your way into starting out on homeschooling. So if you're interested in that, definitely stick around. And then as I go along with these videos, I'm hoping that you have questions along the way. And if you have questions, feel free to put them in the comment section below. And maybe I'll be making some more videos answering those specific questions. Or in the How to Start Homeschooling video, maybe there's some things that I need to flesh out a bit. So I might be making full-length videos for those. I'm not sure on that, but we'll see how things go. But let's get started into the reasons why you should not homeschool your kids. All right, the number one first reason you should not homeschool your kids is pretty obvious. You don't want to homeschool your kids. Now, if you don't want to homeschool your kids, you definitely should not homeschool your kids. Homeschooling is a big commitment. It does take time and effort. It does take energy. It does take research. It does take planning. It does take a lot from you. If you're trying to homeschool your kids properly, it will take something from you. Now, if you're in the situation where your spouse or partner is wanting you to homeschool your kids and you are not sold on it yet, you should not homeschool your kids. I'm not saying you shouldn't research and learn the benefits of it, try to see it from their point of view, things like that. But if you are the one who's going to be primarily responsible for homeschooling your kids and you don't want to do it, you should not homeschool your kids. So if you do need help trying to figure out why you might want to homeschool your kids, like I said, I will have the reasons to homeschool your kids in the description box below, and maybe that will help you figure that out. But definitely don't homeschool your kids if you don't want to homeschool your kids. The second reason is sort of related to this. If you really want to homeschool your kids, but your spouse or partner or the one who's also with you raising your children together does not want to homeschool your kids, you should not homeschool your kids. Now, the reason why you shouldn't do that is, like I said, homeschooling takes a lot out of you. Homeschooling is a big commitment, and both father and mother of those children should be at least somewhat on board. It is going to be very, very, very difficult and probably not beneficial if you try to homeschool your kids against the wishes of their other parent. So I'm going to say that if you're in that situation, don't give up hope. You can continue to research homeschooling. You can keep on trying to find ways to convince the other person that homeschooling is a good idea. But at the end of the day, I would say don't move forward on homeschooling if you don't have at least some, it doesn't even have to be buy-in, but an okay from the other person. And it could be a temporary okay. It could be a, let's try this out for 3 months. Let's try this out for 6 months. Let's try this out for a year. And you can see what it's like. Sometimes really only starting the homeschool journey is what it will take to fully convince that person, but that person does need to be somewhat convinced, or at least convinced to give it a try. So maybe you want to suggest the 8 reasons why you should homeschool to that person to watch. I did sort of make that video with that in mind, but there's a lot of information online. There's a lot of YouTube videos, and there's just a lot of research showing the benefits of homeschooling. So I suggest you keep researching and keep working on trying to convince that person. If you're a Christian, definitely be praying that your partner or your spouse will come to that conclusion at some point. I will say that when I started homeschooling, I did have full support from my husband. However, he wasn't always super excited about the thought of homeschooling. And it was because COVID forced us home for a few months and he saw the changes in our children. That is why he agreed that homeschooling might be better for our kids. So it did take COVID to convince my husband and honestly myself to take the step into homeschooling. So just pray, and God can change that person's heart if homeschooling is the right direction for your family. I want to add on to this, only the other parent of those children or that child matters. Only their opinion matters. Your mother, your father-in-law, your mother-in-law, your sisters, your brothers, your friends, your neighbors, what they say about homeschooling does not matter. They don't have any say in this. It is not their responsibility to raise this child. They don't know this child the way that you do. They're not in the place to make the educational decision for your child. So the only person you need to get on board is the other parent of that child, and no one else needs to be on board to start homeschooling your children. The third reason why you should not homeschool your children is if your home is not a safe environment for them to be in. Now, I'm talking those circumstances that only you can know for yourself what's happening in your home. I'm not going to get into specifics, but you can think about, is your home a safe place for your child to be and to learn, or is going off to public school or a school outside of your home the safer place for your child to be? Now, what I'm not talking about is maybe you aren't a perfect parent. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about parents who love and care for their children, but sometimes they get mad and yell, or sometimes they're just not the most patient person in the world. Now, I'm not talking about that. Everyone is imperfect. Even the teachers at school are going to have those issues. So I would say in those circumstances, you can definitely homeschool your child. You do not have to be perfect. You don't have to be the model of sainthood and perfection and patience. Of course, that is stuff that you need to be working on and learning and growing in, and willing to work on and learning and growing in. But, I'm talking about those extreme circumstances where maybe someone in the home who will be around you while you're trying to homeschool are not the safest people for your children to be around. So that would be a reason not to homeschool your child. Okay, the fourth reason not to homeschool your child or children is because you don't have safe daycare or responsible people to care for your children when you're not able to. So this is more for working parents. If you're a single mom and you work outside the home and your children are small and they do need someone to take care of them, and you really don't have anyone available to do that or the means to find someone who can do that, then sending them to school might be the better option in that situation. Or maybe you have 2 working parents and your schedules are just not going to work out where someone can be home with the kids, and maybe you don't have relatives, you don't have just trusted people who can watch over your kids when you're not able to, then maybe homeschooling would not be the best option for you at this time. Not saying forever, but at this moment in time. And you could be working towards getting a job or position, a work from home or something. If homeschooling is something you really want to do, you can change your circumstances so that it is possible. It just might not be possible at this time. So I am going to say a lot of single parents do homeschool. They either work from home or they have friends and relatives who can watch their kids while they're working, or they just work hours where it works out. So lots of people do it as a single parent, as two working parents, and it just depends on your support system and who you have around you. But your kids do need to be safe and have reliable caregivers and people who can take care of them when you cannot. And sometimes public school is needed for that. The fifth reason you should not homeschool your children is if you're not willing to sacrifice, to give up some of your own comfort, to give up some of your what would be spare time at this point to your children. You're not willing to do the research. You're not willing to dedicate some time to homeschooling your kids. Homeschooling is not just withdrawing your kids from public school and then just letting them be while you go to work and all that. It does take some effort. It does take some sacrifice from your own schedule. It does take some commitment. Now, you don't need to have an extra 40 hours in your week to homeschool your kids. Maybe, depending on the age of your child, you need an hour or two. Often an hour or two can probably suffice for most kids because the younger kids need you for most of their homeschool time, but they don't need a lot of homeschool time. The older kids are going to need you to be on top of their work. They're going to need you to be directing their education, to be finding the courses, finding the curriculum, telling them their schedule, and marking their work and making sure that they're doing their work, but they're not going to need you directly teaching them a whole lot. So I would say if you have an extra 10 hours a week that you can get at any point in your week, it doesn't have to be Monday through Friday. Lots of people can do homeschool on the weekends or evenings. It doesn't have to be just the normal school hours, but it is going to take time and effort to homeschool your kids. So if you're not willing to add that to your life, if you're not willing to commit to doing the research and the planning and the sitting down with your child at the end of the day when maybe you're tired after working, then you probably should not homeschool your kids. A sixth reason why you should probably not homeschool your kids is if you are in I'm going to say a long season of illness that prevents you from spending any of that time dedicated to your children's education. So what I'm not saying is if you're currently a homeschooling family and maybe the main person who's educating the kids has a long-term illness, however, they are able to homeschool their kids between maybe relapses and things like that, and it is something they really want to do and they're able to put in some energy to that, I'm not saying that that person should send their kids to school. And I'm not saying that you get sick very suddenly and you're sick for like a month or two that you need to rush to put your kids back into school just because there's been a month or two that you can't homeschool your kids. I'm talking about you cannot homeschool your kids for a year because you have absolutely no energy, no ability to do the things that you need to do as far as making sure your children's education is moving forward. I'm not talking about people who have long-term illnesses and they're able to kind of ebb and flow with that. They're able to homeschool their kids some days and then they can't homeschool their kids other days. Homeschooling is super flexible. You don't have to do it exactly 180 days a year, depending on your state laws. But I don't think any states tell you when you need to do your homeschooling as far as which days of the year. So if half of the days of your year are okay days where you can be working with your kids and they are continuing to learn and grow with their education. Maybe they're doing it in the summer. Maybe you do better in the summer and you just do school in the summer more and a little less in the winter. That is okay. I'm talking about if someone is sick for a very long time and they really cannot be involved actively in any capacity with their children's education long term, then maybe something else is something that needs to be considered. So those are the reasons why I would say maybe not homeschooling your child might be the better option. However, at the end of the day, you are that child's parents. God has given this child to you to raise. You know and love this child more than anyone else. You know whether or not them going to public school or being homeschooled is a better situation. And so if homeschooling is something that you really want to do, I would say over time you can probably take steps to get moving into that direction. And then another thing is things don't have to be perfect before you start homeschooling. You don't have to have all your ducks lined up in a row before you start. And when you do homeschool, it's not like a lifelong commitment. This is not something you have to say, I'm homeschooling forever, regardless of anything, no matter what. There are seasons and times when homeschooling might not be an option for you in that situation. However, if homeschooling is really on your heart, I do believe that you can be making steps towards getting to the position where you can homeschool. And these are just some things to consider and think about as you're trying to work your way into that situation. So I hope this video was helpful. I hope it wasn't discouraging. I don't mean to be discouraging. I just wanted to give a balanced view on reasons why you maybe want to consider homeschooling. And then I did want to say reasons why homeschooling might not be the best situation for you at this time. Please do let me know what you think in the comments below. If there are any more circumstances where you think that someone should not be homeschooling, go ahead and share that. As I said, I started homeschooling my kids kind of halfway through their school years, and I have found so many wonderful benefits of homeschooling. I absolutely love homeschooling, and I'm glad that I was kind of forced to try it out and that we have seen so many good benefits from it. So if you like videos like this, don't forget to give me a like and subscribe to see my future videos. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope to see you later. Bye, everyone.